Good morning and welcome to our Midweek Conversation. My name is Jerry Hendrix and I'm here with my good friend Tique Hamilton.
Hi, Jerry.
Good morning, Tique.
How are you?
I'm all right, man. How's your day going so far?
It's raining, so it's nice outside.
It has been nice. The transition is nice. A little cooler weather. You never know when that's the last cool spell we have before summer hits, but it's a pretty day.
I wonder if it's raining anywhere else or just here.
It's only raining on us, Tique.
I'm okay with that.
Me
As long
too.
as it doesn't hail again like yesterday.
Yeah, that was an interesting experience. Tique has a new to him Jeep, and it started hailing, and Tique left.
I ran outside and wept.
It wasn't that bad.
It was bad. So if you're listening to us on the live stream today or watching this live stream, go ahead in the comments. Let us know where you're at and let us know if it's raining.
Yeah, that will be helpful. We're glad that that you've joined us. We look forward each week to this time that we can share together just some things that we've thought about maybe since Sunday or just in general in regard to kind of where we're going with our Sunday conversations.
This Sunday was Easter Resurrection Sunday,
Right.
and it was definitely a full day for us.
It is. It's we've had several conversations since.
Yes.
Shout out to Dusty Morrow,
Yep.
who just popped in on a road trip back to Houston, and talking about the different things that that Easter Sunday throws to you as far as church planning and process. It's a very busy week and a very busy day. It's out of the ordinary,
Right.
and so there's that tension of how ordinary do you try to keep it, or do you just kind of lean into the fact that it's a very, in some ways, chaotic day for families.
Well, we started with Good Friday, and that was to me, that's one of my favorite services as far as like understanding what the disciples would have gone through. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we kind of run right through that. But then experiencing the Good Friday service, and then just going through the silence of Saturday and what maybe the disciples were going through, really made it a way more worshipful experience for me on Sunday morning. And we started out with our choir helping lead, our worship choir, and they did awesome.
Yeah, it was, as we looked at trying to sort of expand the program to give a little bit later start time for families to get ready, it seemed like a good flow for Sunday. And then, of course, not only the choir presentation, which really tells the entire story,
Right.
which that was the value of that, is being able to hear that in a creative way, a way I think that is pretty engaging. But then also getting to baptize 4 students from our children's ministry. And I know on social media that's probably been the most comments we've had are about that,
Yeah.
which it should be. So it was a good day to be able to connect with those families. And I know that Lisa was busy during the week talking to them, and I think y'all had already talked to them prior to last week. But so growing families and their understanding of a relationship to Jesus Christ, and so it's fun to know that we have the opportunity to disciple him.
We've talked about all the different ways. I guess it started back when you told the story of the prodigal son, that we use different ways to tell the story because you showed the painting. But this Sunday was probably the best picture of all the different ways that we tell the story, from the choir through
Right.
music to even them being baptized, the visual aspect of what that means in their life, that's only possible through the power of the resurrection.
Right. And then I think every church kind of has its own dynamic on those Sundays. This was our 5th Easter here, mine and Sharon's, and so it's a lot of families. It's not a lot of people who are Easter attenders only.
Right.
It's not a lot of that, but it's still, there's a different feel to the whole day, and but being able to experience it together, experience it with extended families, and then also celebrate what Christ has done for us and see that. You're right. It doesn't get much better than that.
Right. On Good Friday, we blew out the Christ candle, and that made this Sunday the first Sunday that we didn't light the Christ candle.
Right. We're always, we mentioned this last week, that we do debrief every Tuesday on our staff meetings and talk about the previous Sunday or the events, and last week, even going back to our block party that was rescheduled. But I just mentioned to someone that because the tradition here for our Christ candle is that at Advent we begin lighting the candles, and then on Christmas Eve we light the Christ candle, and then we let that light remain lit every Sunday until our Tenebrae service, where you extinguish the Christ candle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have learned that in some traditions, in the way they do a service, the Good Friday service, is they will bring that candle back lit. But again, in you and I talking about the order and the timeline of Jesus, he hasn't resurrected yet, and so there's you leave with uncertainty, you don't want to leave the Tenebrae with certainty, I don't think. And so for us, that's just a window that we use here, and we called it being uniquely First Baptist, and one of the traditions that we have here. I still wonder about it, because I do like the significance of the Christ candle being lit and the reminder of that each week. But for us, it holds meaning. And so, we're in that new season and new rhythm, and it will be fun on Sunday.
Well, I said it last week, and I'll say it again this week. On Friday, I didn't want to hear, it's Friday, but Sunday's coming.
Right.
Because the earliest disciples didn't hear that. And so apparently my mom was listening last week, and that made for a good conversation after the Good Friday service, that a lot of times we do jump to that, and we want to celebrate. But they didn't know that. And so I was listening to a podcast even this morning, and it was their Good Friday service, and the pastor talked about they were about to extinguish the Christ candle, and it would be in complete darkness. And so that visual came back of our service.
Right.
And so I mean that's good for me, at least. That's
a great phrase throughout the year. When you've had a rough week,
right?
When you need to remember that there is a resurrection and that you need life, and sometimes that happens on a Friday. But I think you're right. I'm not a fan of using that phrase on Friday, and we're learning. I mean, that's the thing about it is we don't want to come across. I say we, Tique and I, or our church. We don't want to come across as having figured this out, and this is the way you should do it. We have learned to make the season a part of our spiritual formation, and being a part of spiritual formation, you have to do some teaching and some reminding.
Right.
And everybody kind of comes to these elements of worship in with a different context, more so now than ever in the church's history, probably. And so we want to take care not just to explain it, maybe even from its historical perspective, but definitely explain it from our perspective on how we see that you can use that as a part of your spiritual growth. It's something that I learned in church planting, and then being a part of other traditions. I think it's just sort of a hodgepodge of ideas and thoughts, but it kind of comes together in what we feel like best teaches here.
And I think we over-explain, but it's intentional.
Right.
Like, even when I talk to youth and we'll say something, they know where the palm branches go and that they dry out and where the ashes come from the next Ash Wednesday.
Right. Because
we talk about that, because it's significant. And I think that's good. You don't ever want to get in the rhythm where you think everybody in the room knows what's going on.
Right.
Because that probably means that you don't have any guests in the room.
Yeah. You don't have any new people or people who are not typically church folks that know the language.
So then we got to Resurrection Sunday.
Right.
We already talked about the choir. We talked about baptisms. Get into the conversation. And you said, because we'd moved the time up, and this is that whole given the secrets that happened in staff meeting. You said that it made you nervous when you got up on the stage at first, because you were pretty sure everybody was going, oh no, now he's going to preach.
Right.
After we'd had worship and then the choir and then the baptisms.
Right.
But you had pulled it down just a little bit.
We tried to, that was my concern in trying to, because we talked about this in our evaluation of an Easter service, that there's people going to show up late regardless of when you schedule it.
Right. And
if you only schedule an hour and you're going to end at a certain time, then it makes that a 45-minute service in some cases, or 50. And so expanding it gave us more room to breathe and not be so anxious. But I still think, from my 25 years of being in the pew, that people fear that 40-minute talk when they see the preacher stand up, and most of the time they're accurate on that. And so I strove to go for 10-minute conversation, and probably went a little bit over that, but everything else that we had done was ahead of schedule. So it it was a good time, and we got out a little bit before normal time.
That's the one service of the year where we're pretty adamant that we're going to be done by 11:30. We don't want anybody burning the Easter ham.
Right. You can go over, in my view, you can go over any other time. But if you have guests or first-time guests or unchurched people on Easter Sunday, don't go overtime.
Right.
And don't make it unpredictable for them. And that's kind of what we shoot for in scheduling.
So you're saying an extra long service with an extra long sermon's not going to get people to come back, most likely.
It's not real attractive. No.
That's true.
So, but anyways, that's just a part of our, again, just sort of a backstage view of kind of what we think through and talk about in getting ready for a Sunday.
Well, we talked in youth, or I've been talking with my youth leaders about how we finish up Easter, but there's still more that we can do before the whole Pentecost Sunday, and just looking at all the times that Jesus meets with his disciples. So that's where we're going with our stuff in the youth, is the different appearances of Jesus and the things he did. We're starting a new series in the conversation also this Sunday, right?
Right, and it's called There Is More.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the emphasis that we're going for here is that we don't want to just the resurrection in itself, in terms of the way that we celebrate that in the life of the church, is not a one-time event that once you get to it, you celebrate it and then you move on. Mm-hmm. That there's more that happens there that is real important to what we do now in the life of the church, and it's the development of the church. Right. And so part of that is Jesus appearing with his disciples and others, so that we understand that he is alive, mm-hmm. That they have touched him and they've experienced him, they've seen him eat, so they know that he's not dead, and putting that together, then there's the framework that begins to develop for that actual separation where he breathes on them, and they experience the power of the Holy Spirit in their life. And so that's the more that we want to experience as individuals in our understanding of the resurrection, and most definitely in the life of the church, the way we want to do church if we view the church as being the hope of the world.
And even going back to your narrative comments from previous Sundays, talking about find yourself in the narrative, I think we can all find ourselves in the narrative of what happens between Jesus' resurrection and the start of the church in some of the characters. Peter being reinstated, right. Thomas and his doubts that he had, the women who are the first ones to share the good news. We find our place in that narrative also. Right,
and you're exactly right. I was reading over the text this morning, and a part of the text is the Thomas mm-hmm. text, and where we get the phrase doubting Thomas, because in Jesus' first appearance to the disciples in the room, he wasn't there. Right. When he was told about it, he was skeptical. And I for the first time, I thought, that's me. Mm. I mean, I play the skeptic rather well in life, and I could see myself being that person who goes, hey, I want to believe, but I want to experience this for myself. And so you're right, that we do find ourselves in different places in that narrative, and it's important to still to connect with that as we move forward, finding our place, because it really begins to connect us with the kingdom work now, right? And not just a part of understanding historically what happened, but really learning and finding our place in the kingdom of God.
If we're going to talk about Thomas this Sunday, I'll save my Dr. Law comments for next week's podcast.
And he gets 2 shout-outs? How fair is that?
He will. I mean, because he's got some good stuff on Thomas.
Okay.
So I'll wait. Come back next week. You want to be here for that.
From our theological perspective, N.T. Wright,
Dr. Lyle, and Bob Goff.
There you go. Love does. Well, looking forward to a good Sunday. We did have a great week last week with all the Holy Week services mm-hmm. in our community, fellowshipping with other people, and then even the block party, which had been rescheduled, was a great time for us to see some new families or meet families that are relatively new to us. Mm-hmm. So it's been a great, last week was a great week, and we continue on.
I'll say that having Monday off was a great idea.
Right.
After that week of Holy Week, Monday off was a great day for me.
I'm surveying other friends in ministry and really sort of recommending it. That it really needs, it's sort of mandatory, I think, for us to to kind of recoup. But anyways, we're up and ready to go, move into this new season.
So people invite them to church Sunday?
Yeah. Join us for church on Sunday. We'll meet at 10:30. That's our normal time.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get things cranking for this next series because there is more.
There is more. See you then.
I'll see you there.